Warning: the following video contains explicit language which may be offensive to some viewers or inappropriate for children. The content within this video is intended for mature audiences only.
Science fiction, the great teacher, the great inspiration. It helps us see the endless possibilities of life. So let's be inspired together.
Come with me if you want to live.
We are all explorers, driven to know what's over the horizon, what's beyond our own shores.
We are not sending out interceptors. We have taken them completely by surprise.
Hello everybody, welcome back to another episode of Trekker Critique. My new headset here. I got this on Temu, and I didn't even pay much for it, but you know, it looks pretty cool, doesn't it? I mean, it changes different colors, you know, or it flashes. Each side has its own batteries, so and then you can shut it off. Pretty cool stuff, huh? Kind of goes in line with what I'm going to talk about today, which is another movie review of Godzilla X Kong, the New Empire, which is the sequel to Godzilla vs. Kong. And, you know, it's, I saw it last night, and I have to say, my impression, or my opinion of it was, it wasn't quite as good as the previous one, okay? It wasn't quite as good. And I think it felt like it had a different director in it this time, because the pacing of it was quicker, you know, it was faster, but it had a lot of story to kind of give the audience as to what the hell was going on. Because you remember, I mean, the head characters of this thing, which is Kong and Godzilla, you know, they don't speak English, so they can't, you know, so it's always up to a character to fill in the blanks with dialogue to keep you going, to make you understand what's happening and why things are happening, which is kind of frustrating a little bit in this movie because they do it a lot. And because this story has such a backstory to the story, there's a lot of, you know, filling in the gaps, you know, as the movie progresses to understand why things are happening here. And I, you know, I don't know if I want to spoil it or not, but I mean, I think the movie's been out long enough. People should already, if they're interested in watching it, probably already seen it. So I'm just going to say that, you know, the story really is more about Kong than Godzilla. Godzilla just happens to be a caveat, you know, in this thing, you know, and, you know, he brings something to the end of the story. They take two characters from the previous film, and they focus the story on them. The little girl that was in that one that could sign language and all that, and the older woman that was with her. Those are the two characters that everybody else, well, there is one other character, the black fellow, the eccentric black fellow that was the one that was working as, I don't know what the hell he had for a job, but remember, he was kind of eccentric, and he was afraid to drink water and all this stuff, and okay, he's in it too, okay, so they bring those three from the previous film into the story here, and it was good choice, okay, the three characters really, they pretty much carried the film, I think, more than anything, but the older woman, Dr. Andrews, Eileen Andrews. Okay, this story takes place 3 years after the Mecha Godzilla mess and all that shit. Okay, so this is 3 years after. Okay, so Dr. Eileen Andrews picks up this signal, or at least the little girl Gia does. She gets this. She's having like dreams, you know, bad dreams and stuff. And it's what it is. It's she's picking up subliminally some signal coming from Hollow Earth. Okay, and the signal is really intent on getting her attention, I guess. And so she tells Dr. Andrews this, and at the same time, Godzilla, who's been on the surface, kind of keeping the other creatures under control, as it were, wakes up and starts rampaging around the planet, and he attacks a nuclear power plant in France and sucks up all the radiation and atomic energy and all that stuff in his cells. And then he goes into the water and he swims all the way to the Arctic to take on a monster who's also got lots of energy, and he kills that monster and absorbs its energy. And then Godzilla starts to change color, and they figure Godzilla is powering up for a big fight. Okay, so Gia and Godzilla are aware of something. Okay, Godzilla probably knowing more what it is than Gia, but as it's determined, the source of what they're picking up is coming from Hollow Earth, but nobody seems to believe there's anything left in Hollow Earth, you know, because Kong is still there, and Kong is like kind of lonesome, and he's looking around for others of his kind, and he can't find anybody. So while Kong's living down there and searching, he finds this uncharted area of Hollow Earth where some of his species has survived. Okay, and it's weird how it's kind of hidden. Okay, and and there's this juvenile they call Suko. It's like a baby baby Kong or something like that, and they kind of bank a bond along the way. Of course, Suko was a little bit of a troublemaker at first, but starts to like Kong, and eventually Suko leads Kong to a place where a lot of these Kong giant monkeys and gorillas are being enslaved by this one evil giant gorilla. And his name is Scar King, the other, the head of this thing. And Scar King has in his possession a Titan, an ice-powered Titan named Shimo. And Shimo kind of is like Godzilla, but he walks on all fours instead. Okay, and Shimo is like enslaved by this Scar King. Now, you find out through the story who the Scar King is, what happened, why did he end up, why this is all end up like this. Okay, so you're going to get that in the movie. Okay, and Kong and Scar King immediately go fight each other, and Scar King, using Shimo, he hurts Kong bad, where he's got to retreat out of the place. Okay, and so Scar King is out there sending his army of gorillas to go find Kong and kill him. Okay, which with the help of Suko doesn't work. I mean, so while Kong is limping around hurt and everything, he's found by Dr. Andrews and Gia and a team that gets sent down to Hollow Earth, and they find him hurting bad. And so they use this thing because what happened is Shimo froze his arm. Okay, it's very badly. It's frostbitten, and the flesh is dying and stuff. So they do something. They send this machine or whatever the hell it is. It's kind of like an Iron Man arm that goes over Kong's arm, and apparently it helps, when he starts to feel better. Okay, you know, if it was kind of contrived. I mean, I think that was really dumb, but I don't know. And at the same time, they find a bunch of humanoids down there, the Iwi, which is where Gia is a part of. Okay, because Gia has been separated from them and didn't even know that there was any others like her left, and there were. So there's a whole humanoid colony of Iwi living down there, and they know all about the backstory to, you know, Scar King and Shimo and all that stuff. So that's where you get the whole, you know, enchilada basically as to what the hell is stirring this shit up here. Okay, and so as it turns out, there's a third Titan that needs to get involved in this, and you know, of course it was prophesized that this Titan would help Godzilla and Kong defeat Scar King, and that monster is Mothra, the queen of the monsters. Okay, Mothra. They needed to find and wake up Mothra, so that way Mothra can join in this fight against Scar King and his army. Okay. And once, you know, once everyone's in play, basically, the fight begins, essentially, and it's a big fight because you got all kinds of giants in there fighting. You got all the giant gorillas and all the, you know, the ones that were enslaved to Scar King, and then you got Mothra, Godzilla, King Kong, you know, and Jesus, I mean, you know, you know, they had to bring Godzilla and Kong together, which at first Kong had to lay a trap for Godzilla to get him to come down into Middle Earth, which was funny because they find exit apertures all over the place in Hollow Earth that go to different points on the surface of the Earth. Well, there's one that goes to Egypt, and Godzilla finds Kong there in Egypt, and they have this big fight where they destroy all the pyramids. You know, and then Kong and Mothra managed to, Kong and Mothra managed to get Godzilla to fall into one of those apertures, and he ends up back in Hollow Earth. So that's how they get Godzilla into Hollow Earth to start the fight. And Mothra has to, because Mothra and Gia can communicate telepathically, they understand each other perfectly. Mothra explains to Godzilla in his language why he's there. You know, we're not here to fight you, we need your help. Okay, and so Godzilla agrees, knowing that's what he has to do. And so him and Kong put their differences aside, and they team up, and Mothra's there to help, and then that starts the fight. Big fight, giant fight at the end. Of course, the fight eventually it starts in Hollow Earth, but it ends up on the surface. You know, and of course you got to have destruction on the surface, right? Some cities have to take some damage, right? You know, you can't have this thing all underground. So you got all this big fight happening, and you know, the good guys win, and you know, pretty much that's it. You know, it's so the impression of the film after the fact was like it had this atmosphere of lightheartedness. Okay, there was a lot of CGI. I mean, this movie is basically watching like a video game being played, because there's so much CGI in it that I doubt they really spent much time in actual locations to film this movie. So they spent, how much did they say they spent? It was like $150 million putting this thing together. And true to form, you know, as it seems to always happen, spending all kinds of money on a movie doesn't necessarily mean that movie is going to do well. Okay, and so right now it's only got like, you know, average rating from Rotten Tomatoes. Okay, so that means the audiences weren't like, you know, it's like, it's okay. But it certainly wasn't as good as, say, the earlier Godzilla movie that come out, the one from Japan, which I thought blew me out of the water. It was a great story, great action, everything. I love that movie. I can't wait to get that, to buy it, you know. But this one here is more dumbed down, I think, in a way, for a younger audience to enjoy. And it kind of felt like that, you know, like watching, I mean, I don't know how many of you remember, there was like Godzilla cartoon back in the 90s, I think it was. And it kind of felt like a story written by somebody that worked on that cartoon at that, you know. It just felt like that. I don't know. So, I mean, it's a good popcorn kind of movie. You could sit and watch. And, you know, did I get my money's worth? I guess so. Yeah. I spent $23. I figured, yeah, okay, I got my money's worth out of that. But I see it once is enough, you know, for me. You know, maybe after a number of months or a year or so, maybe I'll watch it again. But it's really not all that. I mean, I've seen King Kong, Godzilla versus Kong, you know, quite a few times since it came out, you know, before this one. And, you know, I like that one. So I like that movie over this one more. Okay, this one wasn't quite as good. And I think it's because there's so much more CGI and so much story there that, you know, it's like, you know, I hate stories that pull you along by the nose hairs, you know, so you know you can't get up and leave, you have to keep, you know, I hate that. I want to know the story immediately, so that way I can get engaged with the characters in the rest of the film, you know. I mean, it's like, you know, Jaws. Remember the movie Jaws, okay? You didn't have to have a shitload of backstory, okay, to know what the hell, you know, what's got to go on here, okay? You see a shark attack, somebody dies, okay, you know you got problems, okay? Someone's got to stop this shark. Pretty simple. So you spend the rest of the movie watching the characters and learning the characters, okay? And not so much learning about where the shark came from, why it's killing people. You know what I'm saying? It's just, it takes away from, you know, the quality of the story when you're focusing so much on the shark and not on everything else. That's kind of how I felt about this. It's just like, you know, they try to mix it. They tried to mix it a little bit where they give you a little bit of information as they go. They try to get you to, like, you know, to learn something about the characters. You know, that's back and forth through the film, you know, and it can be a little annoying. And I don't think they really balanced it that well, you know, because at the very end, everything kind of came out, you know, sort of. And it's like, well, you know, if you were going to do that, you should have just left it to the end to explain everything. You know, that way we could have, you know, invested more in the characters and you know, think about them, you know. Because there was this other B story in the film where Gia, you know, doesn't feel like she belongs on the surface of the earth. I mean, you know, she feels like, you know, she's an outcast. And Dr. Andrews is sort of like a surrogate mother to her. She's kind of living with her and everything. And when they get to Hollow Earth and they find Gia's people, Andrews feels like, I gotta let her go. This is her people. She wants to live with them. Or at least that's what she thought. And at the end, you find out that Gia really didn't want to stay there at all. I mean, she's wants to live with Dr. Andrews and just, you know, leave it that way. So I mean, you had that story, which, you know, I think is, to me, it seemed, you know, like a better story than, you know, the story about, oh, with the monsters have to have a big fight at the end. You know, it's like, it's like, okay, fine, you know. But you know what made the other Godzilla movie before that interesting was the story about the people, and not so much about Godzilla, okay? And, you know, the story, you know, about, you know, these Japanese people who are trying to survive, who have to try to defeat Godzilla, so that, you know, and the two main characters, you know, and the problems that they've gone through, you know, the war and PTSD and all this other, you know, that would, to me, made the story more interesting, more engaging, because it relates to us. Godzilla doesn't relate to us. It's a fictitious creature that doesn't exist, nothing else like it, okay? It's just a thing a bad guy, you know, in that movie, and that's really all it is. I mean, that's just all it is, you know. But in this film, you know, because you could tell it was geared for kids because they try to make more of the monsters than, you know, try to make them more human, I guess, in a way, and the way they think and act. They especially did that more with Kong in this one, but they try to make these characters a little more relatable to humans, and it's just it doesn't really work with me. I guess, you know, I just think that they're better off being really separate from humans in a way. I mean, if they cared at all about humans, they wouldn't go around smashing up buildings, and you know what I'm saying. They would care, but that's not what these things do. I mean, they got their own lives and problems, and it doesn't pertain to us. It's like we're just the ants at a picnic, and you know, and that's the way it should always be. But they try to humanize them a little bit more in this film, and I don't know. It just, for me, it don't engage me. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't. I'm sorry, but like I said, it is a good watch first time. You know. And it did kind of remind me a little bit of some of the older Godzilla films that had sort of weird stories and stuff like that. And I was like, well, you know, you've seen worse Godzilla movies in the past, and this one really isn't as bad as any of those. It's much better, but it just kind of reminded me a little bit of that, of those days, you know, in the 70s and stuff, where you had these creatures acting weird and stuff like that. You know, I don't know. It just felt a little bit less than what I was expecting. Yeah. Anyway, that's, you know, that's what I took away from it. And I'll tell you, when I went to go watch it, I was the only one in the theater. I was the only person in there because, for one thing, I went to the last show of the day, and it was it started at 10:30. Get out of there till after midnight. So I went in there, and the funny thing is when I went online, right, to see if there would be a lot of people there, it showed that there were 5 or 6 other people had bought tickets to seats in there. In the room. When I went in there, nobody showed up, it's just me. So some people bought tickets and never went. I'm like, that's weird, you know, because on their computer it showed that there were seats taken already. Somebody had booked online in advance, and I guess they just didn't go, you know. Beats the shit out of me, but I ended up there all by myself in the theater. I was like in the middle of the theater watching it. And, you know, it's nice because you don't get distracted by, you know, people behind you and stuff or around you, you know, and Corey, you come out of there and it's like, you know, it looks like the theater's closed. You know, there's still some movies ending. You know, when I went in there, I see they got Star Wars Episode 1 playing, 25th anniversary. Can you believe that? 25 fucking years since that first, since Episode 1 got released. Because it was, what, 99 when that came out in the theater? 1999? And 25 years. Believe it or not, 25 years since that movie aired. Jesus Christ. I mean, I couldn't believe it. Because they had a poster in there. And I was like, really? They're playing Star Wars again? And then at the top of the poster, it says 25th anniversary. So I was like, wow. And then I was thinking, well, what do they do? Do they do something to the movie? Do they add things to it? Do they, you know, update it somehow, 3D it? You know what I'm saying? You know, did they do anything to the film? I mean, I didn't even know that they had put that back in the theater. They never advertised it. At least I didn't see any advertisement. I didn't see anything said about, you know, Star Wars coming back to the theater. So, you know, what are they going to do? They're going to release the next one, you know, next year or the year after or whatever. I mean, is this what they're doing? They're, you know, bringing, you know, maybe that's what they're doing. I don't know, but it's good in the way that they bring it out because a whole generation of people grew up. I mean, that were probably born in 1999 and never got to see it in the theater, and now they can. There's a lot of movies that I would like to see in the theater because some movies in the 70s, I was too small then for one reason because it might have been a rated R movie, or it was on too late or something in a drive-in. I mean, they used to take me to the drive-ins, but it was, the movies, I don't even remember what the hell they were that we watched at the drive-in, because they were the things that my parents wanted to watch. But there's a lot of movies that I seen on TV from the 70s, and I was like, oh, I wish I'd have seen that at the drive-in or at the theater, on the big screen. It might have looked cool. So, I mean, the only Superman movie that I saw was Superman 3 at the drive-in. I saw that movie at the drive-in. That's the only Superman movie that I ever saw on the big screen. I didn't see the others, Superman 4 in the theater. I watched that on HBO, and I seen the other ones, on TV or VHS or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Or tape or HBO. But I never got to see them. So I would like to be able to see Superman the movie, in the theater on the big screen. I'd like to see Jaws on the big screen. I didn't get to see that on the big screen. Trying to think of other movies. Amityville Horror, that would be a good one. Oh, geez, because I have I have an incredible amount of movies, a library of my own. I got over like 3,000 movies, on the cloud. Okay, not DVDs, mind you. I mean, I do have some DVDs, but I got over 3,500 at least movies. I got a huge collection. So when I die, somebody's going to get access to that. I don't know who's going to get it, but if they do, they're going to have a mountain of fucking movies to watch and TV shows. Okay, because I have spent decades building a library, and I have been dedicated to, modernizing it as I go. And so I got a lot of fucking movies that I bought, and they're online. You can access them online on streaming, okay? On Voodoo, which is something that Walmart has. I have Voodoo, and I got all kinds of stuff there, all kinds, more than any human being ought to have, to be honest. But that's my hobby, sort of, to watch movies. And I got movies from all different decades and stuff like that, going all the way back to the fucking 40s, and So there's a lot of films that I wish I could see in the theater. And I think what they ought to do, for let's say the Bangor cinemas, they ought to just have one theater at least, just one, and just use it to play older movies. They don't have to play the new stuff as it comes out. That every week they'll play a movie from, say, the 70s or the 80s or the 90s, or even further back if they want to go to the 60s and the 50s. They should do that. I think that would be a good way for people to say, oh, I'd love to see that in the theater because I never had a chance to. They ought to do that. I think that'd be good. I mean, because they got how many theaters they got, and they got quite a few there, so they can afford one to play something that people can see at home, but you could see it in there on the better sound and the bigger screen, So yeah, I mean, I think they ought to do that. So when I saw that episode 1 back in there, like I said, first I was like 25 years, and then I was like, that's a pretty good idea because a lot of people never got to see the original trilogy of Star Wars on the big screen, and they didn't until Lucas started to update the thing, and then they would release it as they went. And this was before episode 1 was released. So some people did get to see those versions in the theater. But I don't think they've brought those back in there since. I mean, I think that, right now would be a good time to release the whole shebang all over again, to give people a chance to see all these movies on the big screen again, because hey, Star Wars on the big screen is an experience. It really is. it's something that you really, if you're like really into visuals and stuff like that, you're going to get blown away by the whole thing of it, because the bigger the screen, the more enwrapped it is around you. You know what I'm saying? So I think they should just bring, Disney should just say, okay, we're going to have all the movies, this year come out every month or something, this month, and give people another chance to be able to watch these in the theater. And I think, especially for the younger generation, they'd really appreciate that, to be able to see that in order, see it from episode 1 all the way up to whatever, the last one. And I haven't, but speaking of Star Wars, I don't know if there's going to be any other Star Wars movie for the theater. I don't know. I haven't heard anything about that. But I mean, you got Disney Plus, the streaming service, has all their collection of Star Wars stuff they made for the streaming service. But I don't know. I think certainly they could do something with Ahsoka in the Star Wars thing, and make a movie or two out of that. I mean, if they wanted to do something there. But I think, like a lot of people, I think, the Skywalker story has kind of been beaten to death now. I mean, it's kind of like, well, can't we do something else? Focus on someone else, a different character in Star Wars, and make a thing out of that. I mean, yeah, the Skywalker thing seems to be the big story, and no matter where you look at Star Wars, it's always going to be about that in some regard. But it doesn't have to be, because they've done things with the Mandalorian and stuff like that that's, doesn't have very much to do with the Skywalker saga, okay? And I think, if Disney wants to do any other movies, I think they should just separate itself from the Skywalker saga and just go in its own direction with other characters, even if they have to make up new ones or something. Personally, I would probably like to see some stories of the old Republic, like 1,000 years before the Skywalker saga. Because, they made video games based in that era during the 90s. I don't know how many of you even realize that, but they've already got characters established that, they took from those video games and made it part of the Star Wars canon. So I would like to see them try to do something like that, maybe, to go all like 1,000 years before, and see the galaxy far, far away as it was then, and from all accounts, it was a different period for them, and the Sith was still around. It was still, that struggle between good versus evil, but it had new characters, and it has, the different stories and stuff. I'd like to see that. I'd like to see them do something with that, but get a good writer, get a good producer, director, get some people behind it, and, forget about trying to, make some kind of modern day statement to, remember, it's a galaxy far, far away. How far removed from us do you really, I mean, you obviously can't speak to every issue that we're dealing with here, because this is not Earth. This is some planet, so far out there that it has nothing to do with humanity. So let it be the way it is, okay? Just leave it, but like I said, it really, Star Wars is not dead. It just needs new imagination, is what it is. It needs some fresh ideas, and I think, the Skywalker thing is an easy thing to write about, because it's already established. It's already canon. It's already, the backstory, so they don't have to do too much work to that. But there's no fun in that. Make something up. Make something new. New characters, new story, new whatever, okay? And put it in the Star Wars universe, basically. And I think that's what Disney ought to do with it, from now on, is just have Disney make its own kind of Star Wars thing, with its own characters, separate from Lucas and all that, from what he created. Just do it that way, whatever. Okay, so that's it. I hope that my opinion about this film that I talked about helps you to decide, if you haven't seen it, whether you want to see it or not. if you do see it and you like it and you say, oh, it was better than you thought, okay. So you liked it and I didn't. Okay, that's your cup of tea. Fine. I'm not going to say don't see it. I'm just going to say this is how I felt when I walked out of the theater watching it. And, you know, I just think differently, I guess, than a lot of people. So, all right. So take care of each other and be nice. And I will talk to you again with another movie, which I hope I'm going to see, the new Planet of the Apes film. I want to see that, and I probably will this sometime this week. And I will do a review on that. So another monkey film to go over. I'll talk to you later. Everybody take care. Bye-bye.